Hello, folks. Welcome to the Genuinely Interested podcast. My name is Roy Bensby, and I'm your host. And I want to explain a little bit about the podcast before we start the show this week. This podcast is an opportunity for me to speak with some of the most interesting people I know that I can find on the internet. So, either with amazing talents or achievements or just unbelievable life stories or invaluable insights into areas that they have dedicated their lives to studying. I sit down with these amazing individuals from all across the world. Really, I've talked to people from Slovenia to the Czech Republic to Australia to countries in Africa and South America, really just all over the world. And I try to ask them the questions that will hopefully help you extract something valuable or learn something new or just get inspired by. And I do hope that you do get inspired by these talks with some sort of a call to action, maybe change something that you wanted to change for a while, or even just enjoy, detaching from the world for an hour and listening to some great conversations. So whatever it is that you get from this, I do hope that you extract something from it and enjoy the conversations. All these episodes are available on all the major podcast platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Google, and the rest of them. You can also find the episodes on my website, which is roybensv.com. You can find a lot of other information about me there as well, from photos to a little bit more insights into who I am, if you're interested. And, you can always go to social media. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. You can find me there. I'm pretty active on both those platforms, although the only ones I have. And I try to post regularly so you can stay up to date. And also be sure to put your email on the website. I shoot emails out with updates, news, any new current information that I have will be sent via those emails and social media platforms. So, yeah, make sure you're in the loop. Today on the podcast, I have Nick Loper. Nick is the founder of SideHustleNation.com. It's a great website, podcast, blog, just a wealth of information about how to start your side hustle, how to get passive income, and just basically how to switch up your life, make time for it, find ways to do it. And yeah, he's been doing this for a very long time. He started it probably the same way that a lot of us are either starting to do it or will do it in the future, where he just had enough of his boss telling him how he should spend his time, when to go on vacation, how to be, where to be, etc. So he just didn't like someone else telling him how he should be spending his time. So he decided to start his own thing. Enter Side Hustle Nation. A great website was born. And yeah, like I said, been doing this for a long time, has probably one of the best websites when it comes to this whole additional income, passive income, side hustle information. And we covered all that today on the podcast. He really gave some great insights about what the first steps are if you are looking to get into something like this, how to stand out, how to build the platform that you want to speak on, how to gain a following, just really a whole host of really great quality insights. So without further ado, I'll let you listen to Nick explain it and break it down for us. So I hope you enjoy this week's episode. Here is Nick Loper. Enjoy the episode, everyone.
The Genuinely Interested Podcast.
Hey, Nick.
Hey, what's going on?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Just getting things started over here. We've got, this is one of 4 remaining preschool days left for this year. So trying to bang out as much work as we can while the kids are at school.
Yeah. So how did they split it up? Like half the time they're home, half the time they're at the school physically, or how do they split it up there?
They so technically it's a daycare branded as a preschool, so they're 2 and 4, so it's not official school yet. We're going just a couple days a week, which was our happy medium after several months of full lockdown quarantine. Which we were like at the beginning, we are like, okay, buckle up, 3 weeks,
Yeah.
we can do this, right? And then it became kind of the new normal. We kind of adapted to it, and they're like, hey, the school's reopening, and we're like, let some other kids go be the guinea pigs first, and then we're like, all right, let's do it. So they've been, and every school day is like it's like Christmas morning. They're just like, school, they're running out the door. It's awesome.
Yeah, I don't think kids have appreciated school as much as they do this year for decades. Like all those years of kids just, I hate school. Now it's like, you know what? School's not bad. I kind of like it.
I get to go see my friends. I get, just a break from everybody. And that's been like for me and my wife, like that's been like just enough of like the pressure release valve that we've been able to maintain sanity through this. Like it was come June, July, August, things were getting a little a little routine, a little monotonous over here.
Yeah, my sister, her two kids, my niece, she calls me like 3 times a day. She's just so boring. And I try to explain to her, like, I can't talk all the time. I'm trying to work, but she's just like so bored. She's at home. And I get it. It sucks. She's like, 13, 14, a bunch of energy. She wants to go out with friends. But yeah, it's a sucky situation for everyone, especially kids, I think. What are you going to do? 2020, hopefully 2021 will be better.
Yeah, hopefully we turn the corner here.
Yeah. So thanks for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. You're one of the top guys as far as the side hustle, additional income space, which is thriving, especially this year. I don't know. You're the expert. You can tell me. But how this whole idea come about? How long have you been doing it? How's the journey been? Maybe give it a little background.
You bet. So I've been hosting the Side Hustle Show since 2013. It is now over 400 episodes deep into
Wow.
different creative ways to make extra money in your spare time from people who've been there, done that, and trying to deconstruct those business tactics and stuff. Tons of fun. Had no idea what I was getting into when I started it. It was started as very much as a side project for me from the original side hustle that I was running at the time, which was a footwear comparison shopping site, kind of in the affiliate marketing arena, which is still, for the sake of disclosure, still what drives the bulk of my income today. Not from shoes, but from affiliate stuff through Side Hustle Nation site. And but that shoe site was the vehicle that let me quit my job. And so I was like, okay, after several years of running that full time, like thinking I had it made, living this early retiree entrepreneur life, just was trying to start something else. Like you go through kind of all of the soul searching questions of what do you never get tired about talking about? What really gets you excited? And I kept coming back to this idea of like, look, this lower risk brand of entrepreneurship. Like, it doesn't have to be jump off a cliff and figure out how to build your parachute on the way down. That sounds terrifying. Um, for most people, the side hustle path is a lot more realistic, and it was I don't know. I felt like I could start to spread that gospel a little bit.
So the side hustle has essentially become the main hustle, right? It got to a point where the side hustle is so big and takes up so much of your time that that's essentially the whole routine, the whole thing.
That's kind of how the dominoes have fallen. So it's the same thing with the shoe business. At a certain point, it was becoming like a second full-time job where it was like, okay, if I had another 40 hours a week to dedicate to it, it's like work gets in the way of a lot of stuff. So that was when it was time to give notice at work and go full-time into that. And similar with the Side Hustle Nation project, like over the first year and a half, it started to be I started to see some upward potential in terms of the income there, but it was also a lot more fun to work on than selling shoes, which I've been doing for the last 8, 9 years. So I was like, okay, here's something new, challenging, different, allows me to exercise different creative muscles that the other business did not. And so I kind of shifted to be the full-time focus, or at least the primary focus within the first year and a half or so. And during that time, the thesis of the site was like, I'll experiment with a bunch of stuff and report back on what works and what doesn't. And so there was always different experiments going on, and there still are to a certain extent, but just definitely not to the level that was going on in the 2013, 2014 timeframe.
Yeah. Why shoes? What made you go into the shoes area?
Totally random. It was through an internship that I had in college, where this was a old school like brick and mortar shoe store in Seattle that had this wild and crazy idea in the early days of the internet to, hey, what happens if we put some of our inventory online? And so, of course, by the time I came online with them as a marketing intern, I think 8 years later, the online portion of their business had grown leaps and bounds faster than the little brick and mortar shop.
Yeah.
And so that was my first introduction to SEO and e-commerce and affiliate marketing and pay-per-click advertising, all this stuff. And so that was really an important experience early on. And after that internship ended, was like, maybe I could be the guy on the other side of this program who's helping drive traffic to these sites.
I see. Interesting. So would you say that out of all, because I know you have, it's pretty diverse, your incomes, because there's actual video about it so you could see, but out of all the ones, would you say that the affiliate marketing is the most lucrative so far?
I mean, that's been the main driver for me. I've done a bunch of stuff over the years, including, selling products and services and ebooks and courses and, selling stuff on eBay and all this stuff. And it's been a blast. Like it's generally been a ton of fun to try all that stuff out. But the affiliate stuff for me has been the biggest driver.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Like I'm drawn to it because of its simplicity. Whereas in the early days, like okay, if I can help somebody in their decision process, like in their buying cycle, and so I would bid in the footwear example, like on very like specific model names of shoes, and like New Balance was great for this. Like New Balance model, you know. 992 or I think was a popular
Yeah,
one back at the time, like they're very specific and
they're great
different like
shoes.
and so it's like a long tail keyword where uh, there's not as much competition, at least at that time, but it was like high purchase intent, right? And so if you could tell that person where they could find the best price on that shoe, here's any relevant coupons that we found, and kind of bake that all into this comparison table, that ended up converting really well. It's the same thing with with the affiliate stuff that goes on today. It's like, hey, people are looking for different ways to make extra money. For a long time, it was like, wait, go sign up for Lyft, go sign up for DoorDash, and there's some of that that still goes on, but it works on the podcast too. So one example from a few years ago, we had Greg Mercer from Jungle Scout, which is a really popular and powerful Amazon product research tool for Amazon sellers, private label sellers. And so he comes on and he's like, hey, here's how I do my product research and how I analyze the competitiveness in this category and all this stuff. And at the end of the show, he's like, by the way, I have this software tool that will do all this for you in like, a few clicks, just speed up this process. And here's a special discount for your listeners. And so it kind of works through different mediums, I guess.
Yeah. But I mean, that must feel good, right? Because you created and built a loyalty between you and your consumers or your listeners to the point where, for example, if I listen to Sam Harris and Joe Rogan and a bunch of others, but if usually when, let's say, Joe puts out a product, he's like, I love this product. It's really good for muscles or whatever. I'm like, I'll buy it. I trust him because he's built this loyalty over time from me, and I trust what he says. And if you have people going through these affiliate marketing through your website, that means they trust you, right? Like they trust that you put out something because you believe in it, and therefore they'll go and look into it.
Right. And you see it on a lot of, I mean, Tim Ferriss is a perfect example
Yeah.
of the Tim Ferriss effect, where products will sell out after a mention on his show. And the same thing
Yeah.
with different YouTube channels where it's like, this obscure book or something random that just ended up getting mentioned in passing. And now all of a sudden it's like back ordered on Amazon. All sorts of stuff like that. It's this combination of figuring out how to help people, like what are the tools and products and services that would be genuinely helpful and beneficial to them, and presenting them in a way that is hey, I've either tested this myself or I think this is worth checking out. And I haven't tested everything myself, but it's, here's, do your own due diligence. I trust that you're a grown up and everything. But here's what I think is interesting. And one example of an affiliate post that did really well, and this is back when Udemy's affiliate program was a little bit stronger than it is today. So Udemy is an online education platform, like peer-to-peer courses. Like put your course up there, sell it. People can take it.
Like Gumroad?
It's not. It's more like a marketplace. So there's probably 20 million plus students on this platform, and a bunch of instructors as well. And so I was like, this is kind of cool because they always are running sales where it's like, $10, $15 per course. And so around New Year's, I knew they had a big sale coming up. And so I put together like this monster list, like here's the top, 101 Udemy courses for entrepreneurs, freelancers, and side hustlers. And it took days to compile this and format it and do all this stuff. But like over the course of the last several years, that post has probably made 30, 40 grand because you can promote it to your email list. It ranks in Google, at least it used to. And it's like, this was like a blatant, I didn't know what the reaction was going to be. This is pretty blatant affiliate play. There's probably 100 affiliate links in this post. And the reaction, people in the comments were like, thank you for putting this together. I was like, okay, that was an interesting reaction.
Yeah, that's amazing. I had no idea these things exist, and I'm learning. Like I don't have a full grasp on everything, but when I start listening to people like yourself and Pat Flynn and a lot of other people on the internet, I'm amazed by how much money, side hustle, like some of these side hustles, people are making more than, people that have a salary and work a 9 to 5. So it's a lot of money. It can be a lot of money.
Yeah, Pat is obviously a huge inspiration of mine. Like the way he runs his business with
Yeah.
transparency and honesty and integrity. Like it's a model that I certainly aspire to. And he's a great example of this affiliate marketing. And early on, it was like, hey, here's how I built this. Here's the tools that I used. If you want to replicate my process, I'm going to recommend you sign up for this thing. And it, worked like gangbusters for him.
Yeah. Yeah. He's also a natural marketer, a seller, right? Like I think he's done, because I was watching him. I remember in the beginning when this whole pandemic started, he was doing a YouTube show, like a live show every day for like a certain amount of time. I can't remember how long, but it was weeks or months.
Yeah, he's like, we're going to do this until we're out of quarantine, and I don't know if he anticipated doing 200
Yeah.
something days in a row.
And we're nowhere near the end of it. So good luck to him. But again, but he's just so good, just sitting there as, when I started this podcast earlier this year, like most people, I thought it was going to be much, much easier, right? Oh, what's the problem? You just sit and talk, and it's nowhere near that, right? It's so much more time intensive, so much more difficult. It's not just you having a conversation with your bro on the couch. You have to do the research. You have to know who you're talking. There's a lot of work that goes into it. And just being able to sit there and talk, for an hour plus each day is very, very difficult for people who don't know. Very
Yeah.
difficult.
And that's the benefit of doing an interview show. It's like, well, or at least having a co-host, right? You have somebody to bounce something off of versus just like trying to, monologue for half an hour. It's like, I don't know what I would talk about.
No, it's a skill. But just like there's a lot of people like yourself and Pat and others that are trustworthy and people flock to get information from. I feel like there's this other trend on the internet where there's so many fake. I don't know if fake is the right word, but people selling you what I feel like is snake oil. These fake courses and promises of becoming rich really quickly. I literally get ads on YouTube every day of some dude standing next to this expensive like car trying to sell you this, 7 steps to being a millionaire. I did it. You can do it by the end of the year. Just, click on my course, which costs like $2,000.
Sure. Yeah.
And there's so many of them. Like I literally get a different one, 5, 6 times a day. And I'm just mind blown by how many people. So if there's so many people, that means people are buying it. And it's unfortunate because and I haven't done any of them. Like it's not from experience that I'm saying this, but it just looks like you're being, fed crap. You're just being fed bullshit. That's what it is.
Yeah, you got to look up Noah Kagan's video that he did recently, like roasting the advertisers on his YouTube channel, which is
Really?
he's like kind of doing a screen like side by side, like just commentary over like the guy, like he's got this camera phone on the beach and he's like, you could live my laptop lifestyle, and Noah's like, there's no Wi-Fi on the beach, bro. It's just it's entertaining, but no, I get you. It's
So my question is, sorry, how do people decipher how, if you're sitting there and you're like, oh, wow, because there are people that have a lot of value and a lot of good insights, but there are those people that are just selling you bullshit. How can people decipher between the two?
Yeah, so my strategy has always been like research what you can on your own for free first. If this person is selling a product, look for independent, non-affiliate reviews if such a thing exists. Sometimes they're really hard to find. Listen to interviews they've done on different podcasts. Like what kind of footprint, what kind of digital footprint presence do they have outside of this course? If it's the first person, if your first exposure to this guru, right, is through an ad, like red flag, right? You're part of their funnel now, and that's that's perfectly fine. Like that's a valid marketing strategy, but just like be aware of that. Like you're a number kind of in their conversion funnel, their system, and like do your own diligence, right? Because not all courses are scams. Like I've bought several and have gotten great returns out of those. The I guess my strategy has been like get something going and then use the course as education to accelerate things, like pour gas on the fire. I have not had, I don't know, I've been more hesitant to buy like the starter program course or like the business in a box style of course. Like, hey, we'll teach you how to uh, get up and running on Amazon. Like, okay, valid business model. Lots of people doing it. Half of Amazon's inventory comes from third party sellers like you and me. So it's like, okay, there's something to that. But I don't know. My my strategy has always been like more bootstrap first, and then use courses to learn something specific to accelerate it. So I one of the courses I bought this year was like it was only about site speed. Like it was a super niche topic, like how to make your WordPress site faster. And it was like, I don't know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, never would have even given a second thought about buying this. But it's like, hey, I've been following this guy for years. I trust him. I like him. Uh, we've met in real life. Like I trust his stuff. I want to support that. And on top of that, I believe there's some room for improvement in my site speed. So that was something that, I don't know. Courses are tough. Like, you have any experience buying any of these business in a box type of courses?
No, I don't think. I'm just trying to think. I don't think I've ever bought any courses online. Um, yeah, no, there's just so much free, amazing, useful content out there, right? And it's not that I have anything against buying. Like, I definitely want to support people that put out amazing content, and but there's just so much. Yeah, I get so much from listening to your podcast or Pat Flynn or depending on the stuff that I'm looking for. Even sometimes I'll go on stuff that has to do with hiking or adventures or snowboarding, and I'll get really
Yeah.
useful information from there. But if I wanted to learn something more in depth, I'm not averse to buying something. I'm just there's I just again it, and I get it. Like, there's a lot of people out there that want to make money, and you're the product, and if you'll buy their crap, they can make money. I'm not against the whole fake it till you make it thing. It's just, if you have it, just you have to sell it well. Like, don't fake it till you make it, but like it looks shady, right? Like, if you're on your bio, it says you're a world renowned business coach, and I can get you followers, but you only have 50 followers. You're not selling it. You have to
Right,
do
right.
that.
Instagram influencer, like shoot, that's you can check your account. Like, well, I mostly do it for clients. Like, okay,
Yeah.
but
Do it for
they're
yourself.
all under non-disclosure, so it's hard to
Yeah, I
verify.
can't really tell you, but it's the top brands in the world that I work with, but I can't name any names. So it's just sell it better. It's just a lot of times I just feel like they're not even like making an attempt. It's just when you have like some guy coming out of Corvette with like a wad of cash and like, I can teach you how to.
Oh my
I
gosh,
feel bad.
it's such a turn off. It's just like
It is.
who does this
It
appeal
is.
to?
But it does. I'm sure there are people who buy it. I'm 100% sure there's people that are like, maybe struggle a little bit, maybe lost their jobs. Like, oh, like maybe this guy can teach me. Look, it's just unfortunate that these people exist. But when again, like, there's just a never ending amount of really really good information
Yeah,
out there.
I mean, so a recent guest said, here was his philosophy. All information is free, all content is free. Like, if you have the diligence and fortitude to like try and source it all on yourself, What's worth paying for is curation. Like, here's what's most important, the structure and order of that content. Like, you pay attention to this stuff in this order, and then community, right? Like, what can you get access to behind the paywall that would be difficult to recreate on your own? Like, the information may be out there if you can go and find it, and it probably is. Like, that's been my style. Like, I'll figure it out on my own, right? But can you accelerate that? By having somebody else do that labor for you up front, telling you what's important and in what order to do it, and then the community aspect of that, where here's everybody else who's going through the same journey to bounce ideas off of, give feedback and support along the way. I think that stuff is what's worth paying for, and that's like been around for thousands of years, right? Like, college has not been a brand new invention. Like, people have been paying for education and courses and community for a long time, but it's just like, okay, how do you shift that online? How do you separate the good ones from the bad ones?
Yeah. Yeah. And they've been paying a lot for it, with, not, I don't think, I think initially in the beginning of the year, everyone thought the whole world is going to change. Like, work is only going to be remote. School is only going to be remote. College is dead. But I think, we're about 7, 8 months, whatever it is, into this experiment. I think we're going to go into a hybrid type of situation. Like, I think people are like, you know what? I actually kind of like maybe going out. I actually maybe like socializing, and also like it. I think for some people it's harder. I like, for me, I know I have like super ADD. Like, I would have a very hard time sitting in a Zoom class if I was 15 years old and learning.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of kids with like learning problems probably feel the same. So I think
Even
we're going
there,
to
like, we got our friends starting like their kids in kindergarten Zoom, and it's like, I don't know, man, a 5, 6 year old primate trying to sit here and like, Zoom calls are bad enough as a grown up. It's tough.
I love that. What, for people that perhaps maybe lost their job this year or just decided on I don't know, to take on a new adventure, what would kind of the tips that you would give someone that wants to start their own thing? It's very overwhelming in the beginning, right? There's so many different things that you have to do and you're not sure where to start. What are the first tips to just kind of like lay the groundwork?
So the first thing is, I would probably take an inventory of your existing skills, right? Like, what have you been paid to do in the past? And you can just look at your resume, like every job that you've ever had, that was a skill somebody thought was worth paying for. So I'd start there, add on what you have learned outside of your day job, and be generous here, because a lot of people, and myself included, tend to discount the stuff you already know because it's hard to imagine not knowing it. But a customer or potential client doesn't necessarily they don't necessarily care about that, right? So think of like, what made you be better than average at, or even better. I don't know. It's a weird way to phrase it, but like, don't discount the skills that you already have, because those might still be valuable. The second thing is to think of what types of problems or challenges or hurdles have you overcome in your own life, or do you encounter today on a daily basis? Like, there was a woman on the podcast whose inspiration struck when she was picking up her dog's poop in the backyard. She's like, I really don't like doing this, but if I don't like doing this, other people probably don't like doing it either. And if I was getting paid to do it, it probably wouldn't be so bad. And when we talked, she had like 80 recurring weekly customers for this poop scooping business. She was making like $1,000 a week doing this. Eventually started farming out the work and hiring people to do the dirty work of it. But it all started with this, like, okay, what is a pain point that I deal with in my own life? And it's just, I have an exercise called What Sucks, where it's like, just, spend a week, 2 weeks, like in pessimist mode, where you're just like, everything just is bumming me out, or like, oh, that could be better, right? Because that's like where, often there's business ideas on the other side of that, because that's where, think about where you spend money, right? It's usually to solve a problem. Like, I'm hungry, right? I will solve that problem by buying food. And so there's usually some, not always, and sometimes the solution is going to be a little more challenging to get off the ground. But if you can start looking for problems, and then either providing the solution yourself, or saying, hey, I'll play matchmaker. Like, I met another guy who had a cleaning business, and it was never about him scrubbing toilets, screaming, or mopping the floor. It was like, I can find professional cleaners, like, but I think I can be a better administrator, right? I can do the customer service and the booking stuff. So I think there's a ton of opportunity in that, skills plus pains. I don't know, maybe imagine a Venn diagram there.
Yeah, that's how my brain literally always works. I'm always like, this could be better. This why am I struggling with this? But I want to ask you about the woman. That's that's really fascinating. So it wasn't a dog walking service. It was literally just a poop scooping service.
Yeah,
That's what you did?
this is it rides a couple trends, right? So people love to spend money on their pets. This is like a documented, I don't know how many $1 billion industry. And it rides this other trend of homeowners just delegating stuff they don't want to do, right? So 20 years ago, somebody gave me this stat like 5% of homeowners had some sort of yard care service, lawn mowing service. Today it's like 40%. Like it's just, hey, I've got limited time. I just don't want to be bothered. Like I don't want to do this. This is not how I want to spend my weekends, right? And so she kind of plays in that space and I found a very receptive audience. She said she posted in these Facebook groups with like a picture of a dog pooping, which was like kind of an attention getting um, thing, like as you're scrolling through your feed. And it was like, hey, pet waste removal starting at 14, $15 a week, message me for details. And she said she got a ton of business off of that.
But I'm so this is fascinating. So what so let's say people would, you know, so I'm assuming this would be more for like suburbs, like people with a yard, right? And then what their dogs would poop throughout the week, and then what they'd call a person, and a person would come and pick up the dog poo. Like how would that work?
Yeah, so strategically, it's trying to stack these up in the same neighborhood on the same day. So it's like, okay, we come by on Thursday afternoons, or if you're doing it as a side hustle, we come by Saturday mornings, and we just do this whole neighborhood, and you can probably make a pretty effective hourly rate doing that if they're close enough together.
That's both that's both insane and genius. I've never heard of that. But that's the thing, right? There's so many different ways to make money if you want, right? As a side hustle that, like you said, can turn into a legitimate business. That even someone like a poop scooping service could potentially be like a big business if she finds a way to to leverage it.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting space to play in here where if you kind of think of these local, traditionally kind of like mom and pop type of services where there's no dominant regional or national player, where it's like, okay, that spells opportunity to come in and build that. So like I talked to Brian Scudamore, who's the founder and CEO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, which has become that nationally recognized brand through franchising for junk removal, like kind of an unsexy blue collar kind of business, but because there wasn't anybody else doing it at that scale, they were able to come in and do that. And I think I mean, for them, it started regionally, started locally, and then expanded geographically. I think there's a lot in that space, especially in the types of like blue collar businesses, trades types of businesses, just because fewer people are going into it. At the same time, the demand seems to be increasing as fewer and fewer people of my generation have those skills or the desire to go out and learn that stuff and do it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, there's that famous how does it go? Build your own dreams, or someone else will hire you to build theirs.
Right.
But we can't all be CEOs. We can't all be founders, right? Even if you're a founder and you're a CEO and you have 30 people working under you, you're paying them to build your dream essentially. Like we can't all be at the top. There has to be some sort of a, and I think that's part of what we talked about earlier. We're like, oh, be a boss, 7 steps to being a millionaire. Like everyone wants to be like the top dog. Everyone wants to be a millionaire, but we can't all be. You know what I mean? There has to be some sort of there has to be a group, not beneath, but there has to be some sort of a layer process where there's some people that build, there's some people that have to pick your oranges, there's some people that can be the top CEOs. Just not everyone can be the top CEO.
Yeah, there's an interesting. I don't know if you follow the FIRE movement at all.
It's a podcast, right? Fire podcast.
There's several now, but this is the Financial Independence Retire Early movement, and this is a reasonable debate inside these groups. Is like, well, if everybody discovers this, which is kind of like, live well below your means, save all your money, and then like, withdrawal, you're saving, like live off interest and dividends and stock appreciations for decades.
Yeah.
But it's like if everybody did that, then like the assumptions that you have built into your stock market growth, like all of a sudden grind to a halt if no one's consuming anything, if no one's producing anything. It's like, well, it would have to be a huge tipping point for that to happen. But I get what you're saying. Like if you're a cab driver, 4-hour work week is not going to get it done for you. So it's just there's different elements there.
Yeah, that's why I don't know if you heard Naval say this, and I think he's a genius. I probably listened to his podcast 100 times or something. I don't know, something insane. But when he was talking about how everyone can be, so basically he was saying that automation is going to clear out a lot of the jobs that don't have meaning rights. And what's going to happen is you're going to have only people that are going to enjoy doing what they're doing, and they can take the time off from doing these manual labor type of jobs. I don't know if that's something some people like doing manual labor, and that's great. I don't know. I don't think we should automate everything, but be like, again, like just not everyone can be at the top. There has to be diversity within groups, right? I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. That's something to aspire to. How do you want to spend your time? Like, I want to do something that is exciting and rewarding and fulfilling and all that stuff. And whether that starts as, a half hour a day side hustle or that eventually becomes your full-time thing, it's, there's a sliding scale or a spectrum there. Um, I, I don't know, like at the same time, like, oh, the robots are coming, automation is coming. And like, we've had more automation than ever before. We've had more robotics and AI than ever before. Yet pre-pandemic, we had historically low unemployment. It was like, well, where did all these jobs go? Like, I don't know. It's like it was a weird argument. So we'll see what happens from here.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be new sectors and people will get hired. It's just I think maybe people who are a little older and will have a little bit harder time to adapt to these new jobs, and then maybe the younger generation is going to grab maybe the majority of these tech related, because everything's going to be tech, right? If everything's being automated, it just seems like brick and mortar is going away in a sense. Everything, you're ordering food through tech, you're getting your education through tech, everything is just tech. So it just seems like eventually the whole world's just going to be on an app.
Everything will be automated, push of a button. It's certainly trending that direction. I remember I did a post earlier this year on like, in-demand freelance skills. And the vast majority were, like you said, IT, security, cyber, all the stuff that you would expect. And there was some other like less hardcore technical stuff on there. But I think the important point is like, you can learn that stuff. Like, the people who are doing it today weren't born, they didn't come out of the womb knowing how to program whatever language. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, this stuff is learnable if you dedicate yourself to it. And there's a lot of resources to do it, like we talked about, very inexpensively.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny when you see, like me, my generation, I think I had my first phone when I was like cell phone when I was probably 18 or 19. And it was just like a flip phone, like some super simple, right? Like I think I only got like an iPhone or like a smartphone when I was, I want to say like mid to late 20s. But my niece and nephew, right? Like they're born with this. Like at 5, I saw them like playing with iPads, doing things on iPad. I was like, how do you know how to do this? It's like, they don't have that fear of, oh, I'm going to press something wrong. It's so intuitive for them. And now at the 11, 12, 13, they know this better than most adults.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like our kids can unlock the iPad, which is not, in fairness, like it's pretty unsecured password, but they've watched us do it. Like, so they unlock the thing, they start FaceTiming. Like, who are you calling? And like, I don't know. It said D. It's like, you called grandpa because it says dad. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. What is the most common question that you get as far as advice? I'm sure you get a lot of emails from people. Is there like a common theme that you get? Something that people ask more than
I mean, the big three pain points that I see most often are kind of like the trifecta of time, money, and ideas. Where like I don't have enough time for my side hustle, I don't have enough money to get something off the ground, and I'm still looking for that side hustle idea. And so we address the ideas a little bit, but if you hit up sidehustlenation.com/ideas, is my like constantly updated laundry list. Just like my hope is you have 8 or 10 different browser tabs open by the time you scroll all the way down to the bottom. Like, that sounds interesting. Like, I want to learn more about that, right? Just like get the creative juices flowing, like see what's out there in the available universe. And the irony there is very few people that I've interviewed on the Side Hustle show, when I ask them like, hey, how'd you come up with that idea? Very few people said, oh, I Googled side hustle ideas and I scrolled down to number 37 on the list. And I was like, that is the one for me. Like that is kind of a rare occurrence, but it's just, to kind of get, see what's available, see what's out there. The time front is a 100% valid concern, because this is like there's never enough time, and the grass is always greener. Like once I quit my job, like I'll have all this time. There's never enough time. So what I found has been helpful for me here is well, several things. After studying productivity and like just being in it for a long time, time blocking, like adding tasks to the calendar rather than just having them on a to-do list. Like this is the time that I said I'm going to get this particular thing done. And blocking time for that. And if you're still in the day job, for me, that was like 7 to 10 most evenings, like when I was living by myself, just like, okay, this is going to be my time. Lately, that's shifted a little bit more to the early morning. Like if I want to get up and have any quiet time to myself, that's either, before the kids get up, and it's kind of like a little whack-a-mole, like they keep getting up earlier and earlier. So it's getting a little extreme, but that's been helpful. And then the phrase "I don't have time," trying to remove that from my vocabulary, and in replacing it with the more honest, "I prioritized something else," which your friends might always not want to hear, but that's the more honest way to say it, because it's like we all have the same 24 hours in the day. How you spend that time is by definition your priorities, right? And so it's like, if I didn't have time, no, you prioritized something else. And like, I'm not going to fault you for having different priorities, but if you say you want to get this thing done, you're going to find a way to carve out the time to do it.
Yeah, time's the only thing we can't get back, right?
That's right. And the third thing was the money side. And that's always, in some businesses cost more to start than others, but like I think almost everything that I've started has been less than $500. The exception was I started a painting business in college, a painting internship in college, and I went out and bought a used pickup truck for like $3,500. So like, and the thing with that too is like, if the business flops, I could just go sell the truck. Like it's not like it's not going to depreciate to zero in the time that I own it.
Yeah, that's interesting. How did that come about? Why specifically painting?
Oh my gosh. So this is one of these things where you get roped in. So this woman comes up, who eventually becomes my manager. She comes up to my, I think it's like statistics class, like intro to business school class. And she's like, do you want a summer internship where you're going to learn marketing and sales and entrepreneurship and customer service and high? And it's like, that sounds like, and earn an average of $7,000 a summer. Like, okay, I'm listening.
Yeah.
And you kind of go through this process. They don't tell you it's painting until you're like kind of already bought in. So you're like 2 or 3 steps like through the interview process. Oh, by the way, you're gonna be painting houses. Like, oh, okay. Interesting. I don't know anything about this. And my girlfriend, who is now my wife, because I was like, is this a scam? Is this a pyramid scheme? Like, I don't know. And she's like, look, Nick, it's 3 months of your life. If it sucks, it sucks. It's not life threatening. And that was actually a really formative experience for me, because it was just like, I remember sitting in my truck on like this like rainy March Seattle afternoon, evening, like preparing to go knock on that first door. Because the other element of this, like, oh, you're going to learn sales. Oh, you're going to learn cold calling. And so it's like trying to psych myself up to go knock on that first door and like, okay, get my pitch going. And, it's just, it was a really cool experience to try and get something off the ground like that. And then to be able to stand back at the end of the week and say like, hey, we made a pretty decent transformation in this house. And to do that at the end of the summer, hey, we did this 25, 30 times and ran a pretty sizable operation. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I feel like that's something the internet has kind of alleviated people or just cut it out of the equation altogether, that door to door, human to human, like how frightening is that, right? Knocking on doors, offering your services. I remember when I was backpacking in Australia, and this guy I know, he was like, let's sell these paintings. You go around, and this was kind of a little shady, because essentially you would say that these paintings were made by people from what was it? Something like people from art school. Like, these are students, and they're trying to essentially pay their way through school. But the reality was, like, the people that own these paintings, they were like buying it from China for really cheap and selling it in Australia for a markup. They looked really good. Like, and I don't know anything about art, so I was like 20, so I was just walking around, knocking door to door, trying to sell it. But like, it's like, he would drop you off at a neighborhood and like, all right, start knocking on doors.
Yeah.
And it's very scary to kind of knock on someone's door and try to start giving them a pitch when they're clearly not interested. But I managed to get a few sales.
Yeah, it's an experience I think everybody ought to have. As awkward as it was 20 years ago, almost. It's especially during pandemic times. Like, it's not something you want to do right now. It's like, I'm not answering that door. Like, who are you? But it's, yeah. And so maybe the equivalent today would be, cold email, cold phone calls, like all that stuff there's different ways to break through it. If you're selling a consumer product, think of like, okay, where are these people aggregating? Maybe it's a poster on the, community mailbox, or maybe there's a way to get in with the homeowners association and say, hey, maybe we strike a deal like, hey, we're coming by on Saturday to do, mobile detailing. I've got 5 spots. Like, who wants in this neighborhood, or something like that?
Yeah. And this is something I think I lack sometimes. I definitely need to work on it. But nowadays, everything is, this is my just opinion, everything is marketing. Like, you have to market yourself constantly, because whatever industry you're going to go into, it's probably pretty saturated and pretty competitive. And if you don't have a blue check mark next to your name, or 100,000 followers, or 50,000 downloads of your podcast, it's very hard to pop out. It's very hard to be recognized or get recognized. And are there some ways for people, to kind of promote themselves that don't have that blue check mark, that aren't associated maybe with celebrities? What's a way to maybe stand out a little bit?
Yeah, I will say this: even if you are not the verified account, blue check mark, 50,000 person influencer status, just by virtue of putting content out into the world, by virtue of doing the work, having a side hustle, like that makes you a more attractive employee. Because, and I think it made me a better employer when I was still working, because, in my off hours, I was putting on the CEO hat and thinking like, marketing and sales and profit margins and all this stuff, which I took back to the office and said, okay, this is how this fits into the big picture. Maybe my boss knew about my side hustle. Maybe he's like, whatever, you're selling shoes on the internet. You have fun with that in your spare time, And then I told him I was quitting to do it, and he was like, oh, okay, that was a serious thing, It was. So I think there are ways to stand out, and think of your digital footprint. Like, if a prospective employer is going to Google you, what are they going to find, right? I asked the same question like early on, when I was starting Side Hustle Nation. Like, when somebody Googles me, like, what are they going to find? And I wanted it to be something that I had control over, that I was excited about putting out into the world, rather than uh, random social media pictures from 10 years ago or something. So like, be conscious about your digital footprint, and kind of put your best foot forward there. And if you have any sort of like content creation, YouTube channel, podcast, right? That's a leg up on everybody else in the competition, because it shows you're like putting your own, like, you're not just sitting back as a consumer, you're putting some effort into being a creator as well. And I imagine for most employers, that's an attractive trait.
Yeah. Yeah, your angry tweets from 5 years ago, they're gonna pop up. People are gonna see them. So just be sure that whatever you put out there, you can get behind, because it's, yeah, like you said, it's always out there, and it could be a positive and a negative. I think, this digital footprint. What is the most common thing I mean, that maybe you see that the reason why people quit their job and want to go down this entrepreneurial road and start a side hustle? Is it, are they looking to get more money? Are they sick of their bosses and their 9 to 5s? Did they just not, time? Like, what's the number one reason?
Yeah, I know everybody has their own reasons. I mean, the money aspect is probably what draws people to side hustling originally the most. Like, hey, I could use I could use some extra money. Like that's something that never goes out of style. Other motivations that pop up are like, I want to use my free time more productively. Like I want to use my free time more creatively, exercise a different side of my brain that I'm not using at my day job. I mean, for me, it was the time freedom motivation. It was just it felt very weird to like have to ask my boss for time off. Like, hey, could I take a Friday? And I didn't even have a ton of vacation, so I was like, could I take a Friday, like next month? And he never said no. Like it wasn't even that type of work situation, but it just felt weird to have to like ask, like to not be in control of my own calendar for whatever reason. That rubbed me the wrong way. So different motivations for different people, but the I think probably the biggest thing to take away there is like that's going to need to be a pretty strong motivator to keep you going through the hard times because it's challenging to get something off the ground. And if the day job is okay, if work life is okay, then if the why isn't strong enough, then you're probably going to be like, just bag it, just forget it. I'll just keep working here.
Yeah. Is is How did things develop for you? Is it just organically? Were you saying, I completely understand that, because I'm exactly the same. Like, I hate being told, like, be here at this time. You can't do it. Like, I hate that. So I fully understand. But, did you develop things organically? I'm assuming you didn't have the whole thing planned out from the get go, right? You were probably like, all right, let me start this one thing. And then that one thing developed into two, three things and gradually grew.
Yeah, you're right. This is a bit of advice that was shared on the Side Hustle show. I want to say episode 72, 2014, like early days of the show. And the guy says, the best opportunities aren't visible until you're already in motion. And at the time, I kind of almost dismissed that as like, yeah, it sounds kind of like woo woo advice. But in the 6 years since that, I've found it to be 100% true. It's it's getting off the sidelines and into the game. There's an element of side hustle physics or entrepreneurial physics here. Like an object in motion tends to stay in motion. It's harder to get from 0 to 1, like that inertia to get over that first hump. And so the argument that follows is like, so it doesn't matter what you start. And because that's the other pain point. Like everybody gives the advice, just start. But what? But what? That's like always like, I don't know what to do. Um,
Yeah.
what I found is that most side hustle show guests started with a service based business. Uh, it's not as glamorous as the passive income and the guy showing wads of cash getting out of his Lambo, whatever. But like most people start there, right? And for me, same thing for me, painting business, like, hours for dollars in a certain sense, like I'm going to solve this problem and you're going to pay me. And it's a simple, straightforward thing, not a lot of startup costs to get off the ground. So that's kind of where we tend to go on that end.
How do you sometimes go back and listen to like your first podcast? Like, have you heard your first podcast since?
I have not gone back to listen to them. I listened to the intro of the first one somewhat recently and actually added a new intro to the very top of the show because I know people will go back and like try and find episode 1. And so it says like, hey, Nick here from the future. Um, you're gonna hear this conversation in all its awkwardness. I'd never hosted a podcast before. Side Hustle Nation has grown beyond anything I could have imagined at this time. There's a whole community. I would love for you to come join us and all this stuff. So it's like going back and editing at least that intro, and then here, let's roll the original tape from 2013 where I had no idea what I was getting into.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because I recently, and I'm nowhere near the number you have. I have only like 60 episodes, but the first couple, I was just so scared in the beginning. Like my hands were like shaking a little bit when I started the episode. And it's so true what you're saying. It's just inertia. Now, I'm sure I'll be better in 100 episodes, but I'm way better now than I was in episode one. And it's an evolution. You just grow as a human. You grow. You feel more comfortable doing what you're doing. You have to just do it.
Yeah,
Just literally Nike thing. Just do it.
just do it. I was another guest recently said, Nick, fill in the blank. Anything that's worth doing is worth doing. And I was like, well, right. She's
Mhm.
like, no, anything that's worth doing is worth doing poorly, because when you're first starting out, you probably don't know enough to do it well. And I was like, oh, that's something that stuck with me, because it's like, yeah, if I had waited for perfection, the shoe business never would have gotten off the ground, because it was an ugly, ugly, MVP type of first version. Same thing with the show. Like, first 50 episodes, probably reasonably embarrassing to have out there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you almost have to get in those reps before you can get, just kind of to find your groove.
Yeah. I almost can't even listen to the first episode. I just I get like goosebumps over my body. I'm like, oh, this is horrible. But there's no way for me to have episode 20 be my first episode. You know what I mean? Like, I have to go through the fire. You have to put out the shitty ones. You have to put yourself out there and expose yourself. And I'm sure, people weren't listening to the first ones like, wow, this guy is amazing. I'm sure they weren't, right? But some people stuck around and some people kept listening, and I see an uptick. There's gradually more people are listening. So it's just, you have to go through the fire.
Yes, that's a good sign. Like, do it good enough, right? You don't want to put out just total garbage. Like, put
Yeah.
some thought and care into it, uh, but yeah, understand that you're going to get better. And hopefully, another friend is like, "Hey, I'm embarrassed by the work I did a year ago, and a year from now, I hope I'm embarrassed by the work I'm doing today."
Oh, that's good. And podcasts are always ebbs and flows, but have you seen kind of maybe an increase or decrease this year with Corona?
Man,
As far
in
as as
March,
far as uh, as far as listenership, sorry.
yeah, in March, I saw a pretty sizable dip. I think attributed to people just not commuting anymore and just having other stuff on their mind. But it's been pretty steady for the rest of the year. So I typically see a spike in January. So banking on that a little bit to hopefully bring some new people into the fold.
Because I just started this year, and I always kind of wonder, is this what it just is, right? Like, if I would have started 2019, would I have seen the same numbers? It's just something I kind of wonder back and forth in my head. But it's interesting to see that it's relatively the same. Where can people find you on the internet? Where are the best places?
SideHustleNation.com is the home base. We mentioned SideHustleNation.com/ideas if you are in that place of looking for a little inspiration. And of course, we'd love to have you tune into the Side Hustle Show wherever podcasts are sold.
Side Hustle Nation. Go check it out, everyone. Nick, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I had a blast, and we'll have to do it again one day.
You bet. Lots of fun.
All right, man. Take care.